What if I told you that some motorcycles cost more than a luxury penthouse, more than a private jet charter, and in some cases, more than the entire lifetime earnings of the average working person? Today, we are counting down the 15 most jaw-droppingly, wallet-obliteratingly, obscenely expensive motorcycles you can actually buy in 2026. These are not just machines. They are rolling monuments to human engineering obsession. Stay with us because number 1 will make your eyes water. Number 15, Ducati Superleggera V4. Let's kick things off with a machine that Ducati themselves describe as the most extreme motorcycle they have ever produced. And when Ducati says extreme, the entire industry stops and pays attention. The Ducati Superleggera V4 is powered by a 1,103cc Desmosedici Stradale RV4 engine. The same architecture used in Ducati's MotoGP racing program, producing 224 horsepower in street configuration and a staggering 234 horsepower when the optional racing exhaust is fitted. That is more power than a Porsche Boxster on 2 wheels, with no roof and no seatbelt. But the engine is almost secondary to what Ducati did with the chassis. The Superleggera V4 uses a carbon fiber monocoque frame, not carbon reinforced, not carbon accented, a full monocoque structure where the carbon fiber is the frame. The swing arm is carbon fiber. The wheels are carbon fiber. The bodywork is carbon fiber. Even the exhaust system uses carbon fiber heat shields. The result is a dry weight of 350 pounds, making it pound for pound the most power-dense production motorcycle on the planet at the time of its production. Ducati produced only 500 units worldwide, each one individually numbered, each one delivered with a certificate of authenticity and a personalized delivery experience at Ducati's Bologna factory. Used examples in pristine condition now trade at auction for between $80,000 and $100,000. When new, the Superleggera V4 retailed at approximately $100,000 and sold out within hours of the order book's opening. But wait, if Ducati can build something this extraordinary at $100,000, what happens when a manufacturer removes all financial constraints entirely and simply asks their engineers to build the best thing possible, regardless of cost? Keep watching, because the answer starts right now. Number 14, Kawasaki Ninja H2R. Kawasaki has been quietly building one of the most terrifying motorcycles in human history, and they have been doing it with the calm confidence of a company that knows nobody else on earth can match what they have created. The Kawasaki Ninja H2R is the only production motorcycle in history to use a supercharged engine, a 998 cubic centimeters inline 4 with a centrifugal supercharger designed and manufactured entirely in-house by Kawasaki. The result is 300 horsepower, not 250, not 280, 300. That is more power than a Ferrari California on a motorcycle that weighs 476 pounds wet. The supercharger itself is an engineering achievement so significant that Kawasaki holds multiple international patents on its design. It spins at approximately 130,000 revolutions per minute faster than a jet turbine and forces air into the engine at pressures that would cause a conventional engine to self-destruct within seconds. Kawasaki's solution was to redesign every internal engine component from scratch. Stronger pistons, reinforced connecting rods, a forged crankshaft, and revised cylinder head geometry, creating what is essentially a race engine that happens to have a number plate. The H2R is not street legal in most countries. It is sold specifically for track use, which means Kawasaki was under zero regulatory obligation to limit its power output. The suspension is Öhlins front and rear, fully adjustable. Brembo monoblock calipers provide braking. The frame is a twin-tube high-tensile steel trellis reinforced with cast aluminum sections. The wings, yes, actual aerodynamic wings, generate enough downforce to keep the front wheel on the ground above 155 miles per hour. New pricing for the H2R sits at approximately $155,000. Used examples rarely appear on the open market, but when they do, they trade for between $130,000 and $170,000. Think that is extreme? Wait until you see number 13, because someone looked at the H2R and thought, quote, what if we made it street legal and added more carbon fiber? Number 13, Kawasaki Ninja H2 Carbon. Here is something nobody tells you about the difference between the H2R and the H2 Carbon. The carbon version is the one that will genuinely change your life because you can actually ride it on public roads without requiring a private circuit booking. The Kawasaki Ninja H2 Carbon uses the same supercharged 998 cubic centimeters inline 4, but tuned to 230 horsepower in street configuration, a figure that makes it the most powerful street-legal production motorcycle ever sold. The carbon designation comes from the full carbon fiber upper fairing, not cosmetic carbon look trim, but structural carbon fiber manufactured using the same autoclave process used in Formula One aerodynamics. The 2026 H2 Carbon receives updated Kawasaki cornering management function, a 6-axis IMU feeding cornering AEBS, traction control, launch control, Öhlins electronic steering damper, and Kawasaki's electronic suspension interface. The instrument cluster is a stunning 4.3-inch color TFT with full smartphone connectivity, mirror finish, carbon wheels, mirror polished engine cases, a motorcycle that is as much jewelry as it is transport. Wet weight is 520 pounds. New pricing for the H2 Carbon starts at approximately $68,000. Used examples with low mileage trade for between $55,000 and $65,000. 230 horsepower and mirror finish carbon wheels. A supercharger spinning at 130,000 RPM on a street-legal motorcycle. And yet, number 12 on this list costs double the price. Took 40 hours just to paint and was limited to 500 units because BMW decided that making more would somehow cheapen what they had created. Some manufacturers build motorcycles. BMW occasionally builds declarations. Number 12. BMW M1000R R50 years M. Hold on. Before you think you already know everything about BMW's most extreme superbike, let me tell you about the version that BMW built to celebrate 50 years of the M division and why it is in a completely different category from everything else wearing the BMW badge. The BMW M1000R R50 years M is limited to 500 units worldwide and features hand-painted M Motorsport livery applied by BMW individual craftspeople, a process that takes over 40 hours per motorcycle. The base machine uses the 1070cc inline 4, producing 221 horsepower, the most powerful engine BMW Motorrad has ever fitted to a production motorcycle, with titanium connecting rods, a magnesium valve cover, and a forged crankshaft. The 50 years M edition adds carbon fiber wheels, saving 3.1 pounds of unsprung weight compared to standard items, laser-engraved engine cases, a titanium Akrapovic exhaust system, saving an additional 11 pounds, and a gold anodized Öhlins front fork with electronic rear shock. Every unit ships with a numbered certificate, a personalized key pouch, and an invitation to a private BMW M event at the Nürburgring. Wet weight is 439 pounds. New pricing was approximately $125,000 at launch. Current market value for unridden examples has already climbed to between $140,000 and $160,000. Just hold on, we are not done yet. Number 11 is a motorcycle built by a company whose waiting list is longer than most people's mortgage terms, and they are completely unbothered by that fact. If this list is already making your jaw hit the floor, smash that like button right now and subscribe. Drop a comment below and tell us, which of these would you buy if money was no object? Number 11. Ducati Panigale V4 SP2. Here's a machine that Ducati positions not as a motorcycle, but as a racing program that comes with number plates as an optional extra. The Ducati Panigale V4 SP2 uses the Desmosedici Stradale R engine in a 1031cc street tune producing 220 horsepower, and every single performance component has been sourced from Ducati's World Superbike Championship program. Brembo Stylema, or monoblock calipers, the same units used by world champion riders, grip carbon ceramic Brembo discs. Full Marchesini forged magnesium wheels reduce unsprung weight to a point where the suspension literally cannot respond fast enough to the wheel's changes in direction, requiring Öhlins Smart EC electronic suspension to compensate in real time. The SAP2 designation means Sport Production 2, a homologation specification that allows this motorcycle to compete in World Superbike production class racing with minimal modification. The carbon fiber dry clutch cover lets you hear the clutch mechanism operating, a staccato mechanical rattle at idle that sounds like a racing engine warming up on the grid. For 2026, Ducati has updated the electronics package with improved cornering ABS calibration and a revised wheelie control strategy derived from data gathered during the 2025 World Superbike season. Wet weight is 430 pounds. New pricing starts at approximately $48,000. Use 2023 and 24 examples. Trade for between $38,000 and $45,000. 220 horsepower, carbon ceramic brakes, World Superbike DNA. And somehow, number 10 costs more. Built slower, by fewer people, using techniques that most factories abandoned decades ago because they were too expensive and too time-consuming. Turns out, those are exactly the reasons certain buyers will wait 2 years to own one. Number 10. Norton V4CR. Wait, most people outside of England have never fully understood what Norton means to the motorcycle world. And that is exactly the tragedy. Norton Motorcycles, reborn under new ownership and with unlimited investment since 2020, have produced the V4CR, a machine that represents not just a motorcycle, but the resurrection of a legend. The V4CR runs a bespoke 1240cc V4 engine developed entirely in-house at Norton's Donington Hall facility, a hand-assembled unit producing 185 horsepower and 130 Newton meters of torque. Every engine is bench tested for 4 hours before installation. Every unit is signed by the engineer who built it. The chassis is a hand-welded steel trellis frame built by Norton's in-house frame specialists using aerospace-grade tube, combined with Öhlins 43mm USD forks and an Öhlins TX rear shock. The bodywork is hand-laid carbon fiber. The seat is hand-stitched British leather. The instrument cluster is a custom 5-inch TFT designed exclusively for Norton, not a shared unit from a supplier catalog, but a bespoke piece. Every Norton V4CR takes approximately 800 hours of hand labor to complete. Production is limited to 200 units per year, a number that Norton has no intention of increasing. Wet weight is 454 pounds. New pricing starts at approximately $58,000. The current waiting list is over 2 years. Now, you may be wondering, what happens when a boutique manufacturer decides that 200 units per year is still too many and limits production to fewer than 100? Number 9 answers that question with a price tag that requires a moment of deep breath before reading. Number 9. Arch Motorcycle KRG T-1. Keanu Reeves builds motorcycles, and before you assume this is a celebrity vanity project, stop. The Arch Motorcycle KRG T-1, co-designed by Keanu Reeves and master fabricator Gard Hollinger, is one of the most critically acclaimed custom production motorcycles in the world, praised by engineers, designers, and professional riders who have zero interest in celebrity association. Every Arch KRG T1 is built around the specific rider, frame geometry, seat height, handlebar position, foot peg placement, all custom configured during a personal consultation session at Arch's Los Angeles facility before a single component is manufactured. The KRG T-1 uses an S&S Cycle X wedge, 1979 cubic centimeters, V-twin engine producing 121 horsepower and 181 Newton meters of torque, a torque figure that belongs in a pickup truck, delivered through a Baker 6-speed overdrive gearbox. The frame is billet aluminum, machined from solid blocks of aerospace-grade material, not cast, not welded, with geometry calculated using computational fluid dynamics, software developed for aircraft design. Öhlins suspension front and rear, Brembo braking front and rear. Every arch takes approximately 1,100 hours to complete. Fewer than 80 units are produced each year. New pricing starts at approximately $85,000 and rises significantly depending on customization. Used examples, when they appear, sell for between $75,000 and $100,000. 1,100 hours of hand labor. Billet aluminum machined from solid blocks. A motorcycle built specifically around your body. Extraordinary, right? Now imagine a manufacturer that took all of that philosophy and then said, the frame itself is not exotic enough. Number 8 threw out every conventional steering system ever designed and started from a completely blank page. Number 8, Virus Alien. Oh, you thought you had heard of every exotic motorcycle manufacturer? The Virus Alien is the machine that consistently stops conversations at motorcycle shows. Not because of its price, not because of its famous badge, but because nobody can immediately understand how it works. The Virus Alien uses a Ducati Desmo 16 RR engine, the legendary 1,000 cubic centimeters V4 producing 200 horsepower, but mounted in a chassis concept so radical that it makes conventional motorcycles look like they were designed in the Middle Ages. There is no conventional fork. Instead, the Alien uses a hub center steering system, a single-sided front swing arm with a central steering pivot that completely separates the steering and braking functions. When you apply the front brake, the motorcycle does not dive. When you steer, the suspension is completely unaffected by braking forces. The result is a motorcycle that handles with a precision that defies the physics of conventional design. Zero brake dive, zero steering feedback from road surface. Total independence between every chassis function. The frame is a custom chromoly steel trellis. The bodywork is hand-laid carbon fiber by Italian craftspeople in Virus's Rimini workshop. Production is limited to 12 units per year. 12. Not 12,000, not 1,200. 12. New pricing starts at approximately $180,000. Used examples essentially do not exist on the open market. Owners retain them with the grip of people who know they own something truly irreplaceable. You've just seen $180,000 for something that 12 people on Earth will ever own. Astonishing. But number 7 arrives from a brand so old, so storied, and so unapologetically British that they do not consider $180,000 exotic. They consider it a reasonable starting conversation. But before we move on, comment below which motorcycle on this list would you keep and which would you sell? Number 7, Bro Superior SS100. Here is something nobody tells you about Bro Superior. In the 1920s and 30s, they were called the Rolls-Royce of motorcycles, not as a compliment, but as a factual assessment. Every Bro Superior was personally tested by George Bro himself before delivery. Every unit was guaranteed to exceed 100 miles per hour. The modern Bro Superior SS100, revived by new French ownership in 2013, maintains every element of that original philosophy and adds 21st century engineering to create something that is simultaneously the most historically connected and most technologically advanced hand-built motorcycle in existence. The SS100 runs a bespoke 1080cc V-twin engine designed in collaboration with AM Racing, producing 94 horsepower and 118 Newton-meters of torque. But the numbers are almost irrelevant. What matters is how the engine is built. Hand-assembled by a single technician in Toulouse, France, over the course of several weeks. The frame is hand-brazed chromoly steel, not welded, brazed, using a technique that produces stronger, smoother joints than any welding process. The tank is hand-formed steel. The seat is hand-stitched, British leather over a hand-shaped aluminum base. Öhlins suspension, Brembo braking. Production is limited to 60 units per year. New pricing starts at approximately $108,000. Used examples in original condition sell for between $95,000 and $125,000 and appreciate in value every single year. 60 units per year. Hand-brazed chromoly. $108,000 for a machine built across several weeks by a single technician. Impressive restraint from Bro Superior. But number 6 looked at that production philosophy and said, 60 is still too many. Their answer involves a helicopter, a Rolls-Royce, and a rear exhaust that will thermally compromise anything standing behind it. You are not prepared. Number 6, MTT Turbine, Superbike Y2K. Some people say the MT Turbine Superbike Y2K is the most insane production motorcycle ever built. We say those people are correct, and we are thrilled about it. The MT Y2K uses a Rolls-Royce Allison 250 C18 turboshaft engine, a helicopter engine, producing 320 horsepower and 575 Newton-meters of torque. A helicopter engine in a motorcycle that you can legally ride on public roads in most American states. The turbine runs on jet fuel, diesel, kerosene, or virtually any combustible liquid, making it theoretically refuelable at any airport on Earth. MTT, Marine Turbine Technologies, is a Louisiana-based company that produces these machines in strictly limited numbers. The turbine spins at approximately 52,000 revolutions per minute, completely inaudible to the rider, who hears only a high-pitched whine and feels a wall of torque that begins at 0 RPM and does not stop building until the laws of physics intervene. The chassis is a custom chromoly steel unit with conventional telescopic forks and a monoshock rear. Surprisingly traditional for a machine with a helicopter powertrain. A rear-mounted camera feeds a small monitor on the handlebar because the turbine exhaust exit at the rear means a conventional mirror view is thermally compromised. New pricing for the current generation starts at approximately $175,000. Used examples are essentially impossible to value because nothing comparable exists to provide a reference point. And here's the terrifying truth about number 5. Compared to what comes next on this list, the MTT turbine starts to look like reasonably sensible value for money. Brace yourself. Number 5. Ecosi Titanium Series, FETI XX. Wait, you think you know what expensive means? You do not. Not yet. The Ecosi Titanium Series FETI XX is a motorcycle built by a Colorado-based boutique manufacturer whose stated design philosophy is this: every component must be the best version of that component that can be manufactured, regardless of cost. And they mean it. The FETX uses a supercharged 2,000 cubic centimeters V-twin engine producing 225 horsepower. But the engine is perhaps the least interesting thing about this motorcycle, because every other component is so extraordinary that the powertrain becomes almost secondary. The frame is aerospace-grade titanium, not titanium accented, not titanium colored, solid titanium, machined and welded by aerospace engineers who normally work on spacecraft components. The wheels are forged titanium. The fasteners, every nut, bolt, and screw on the entire motorcycle are titanium. The fuel tank is hand-formed titanium. The exhaust is titanium. The result is a motorcycle that weighs under 375 pounds despite having a 2,000cc engine, a weight-to-power ratio that approaches Formula One territory. Öhlins racing suspension, front and rear. Brembo racing calipers, hand-stitched Alcantara seating. Production is limited to 13 units per year. New pricing starts at approximately $275,000. Used examples, when the extremely rare circumstance of an owner parting with one occurs, have sold for over $300,000 at specialist auction. I know it all sounds like the absolute ceiling of motorcycle excess until number 4 reminds you that somewhere in America, a department store once put a motorcycle in its Christmas catalog between the diamond bracelets and the private island experiences, and people actually bought it before the turkey was even carved. Number 4. Neiman Marcus Limited Edition Fighter. The legend of excess arrives. The Neiman Marcus Limited Edition Fighter is the motorcycle that redefined what the phrase limited edition means in the context of two-wheel transport. And it did so by being offered in the Neiman Marcus Christmas catalog alongside diamond jewelry and private island experiences. Only 45 units were produced. Each one was built by Composition Cycles, a boutique American manufacturer, around a frame and aesthetic designed to be as much sculptural art as functional motorcycle. The Fighter uses a billet aluminum monocoque frame, the entire structural chassis machined from a single block of aluminum, a manufacturing process so time-consuming and material wasteful that it is essentially never used in production vehicles outside of aerospace applications. The powertrain is a modified V-twin producing 150 horsepower, fed through a close ratio 6-speed gearbox. Every unit was personally inspected and signed by the head of Composition Cycles before delivery. The original retail price was $270,000. At the time, the most expensive production motorcycle ever offered for sale. Today, the 45 surviving units are regarded as collector artifacts, equivalent in investment terms to important works of art. Auction estimates for clean, documented examples start at approximately $350,000 and have been known to reach $500,000 at major collector auctions. 45 units. A billet aluminum monocoque, $270,000 in a Christmas catalog. It sounds like the most excessive thing a motorcycle manufacturer could possibly do until number 3 walks in the room, parks a 10-cylinder Viper engine on 2 wheels, and quietly asks if anyone has a runway they are not currently using. Which motorcycle on this list deserves to be in a museum, and which one deserves to be ridden until the tires fall off? Tell us in the comments. And hit that like button. It costs you nothing and means everything to this channel. Number 3. Dodge Tomahawk. Oh, you thought we were done surprising you? The Dodge Tomahawk is the motorcycle that Chrysler's engineers built in 2003 to answer a question that nobody had asked. Specifically, what would happen if you put a Viper V10 engine in a motorcycle? The answer, it turns out, is the most powerful, most terrifying, and most controversial production motorcycle in the history of the form. The Dodge Tomahawk uses an 8,200cc Viper V10 engine, a a 10-cylinder, 90-degree V configuration unit producing 500 horsepower, on a motorcycle weighing approximately 150 pounds without fuel. The theoretical top speed of the Tomahawk, calculated from the engine output, gear ratios, and aerodynamic modeling, is approximately 298 miles per hour. Dodge acknowledges that nobody has ever achieved this, and strongly implies that nobody should try. The four-wheel design, 2 wheels at the front, 2 at the rear, each pair articulating independently on a center joint, was a necessary engineering compromise because the tire technology required to handle 500 horsepower on a 2-wheeled platform does not exist. Only 9 units were produced, all sold through Neiman Marcus at an original price of $500,000 each. Current auction estimates for the 9 existing examples range from $500,000 to $700,000. This is the most mechanically terrifying production vehicle ever offered for public sale. And yet, number 2 costs more. Not because it is faster, not because it is more powerful, not because it has more carbon fiber or titanium or helicopter parts. It costs more because it is 130 years old, and it was the first. There is only one first, and the market never forgets that. Number 2, Hildebrand and Wolfmuller Heritage Commission. We are in the top 2, and this is where the list transcends the concept of expensive and enters the territory of historically irreplaceable. The Hildebrand and Wolfmuller, built in 1894, is not merely the most valuable motorcycle you can purchase. It is the first production motorcycle in human history. The original machines, of which fewer than 200 were manufactured between 1894 and 1897, represent the literal beginning of motorcycling as a concept. A perfect original example in documented running condition is the holy grail of motorcycle collecting. And when one appears at auction, it sells for between $1 million and $2 million. The Hildebrand and Wolfmuller uses a parallel twin, water-cooled 1400cc engine, a larger displacement than many modern sport bikes, producing approximately 2.5 horsepower. The engine connects directly to the rear wheel via connecting rods. No gearbox, no chain, no clutch. The rear wheel is the flywheel. The cooling system is a series of rubber tubes running along the rear mudguard, the world's first liquid-cooled production engine, over a century before the technology became standard. When the rare opportunity to commission a period-correct restoration or acquire a documented original arises, handled exclusively through specialist auction houses, including Bonhams, Sotheby's, and RM Sotheby's. The price begins at approximately $1 million and is limited only by how many collectors are in the room. And now, number 1. The motorcycle that is not merely the most expensive on this list, but the most expensive ever sold at public auction in the history of the form. A machine whose value is simultaneously financial, cultural, historical, and mythological. Are you absolutely ready? Number 1. Harley-Davidson, owned by Steve McQueen, of course. It was always going to involve Steve McQueen. The most expensive motorcycle ever sold, and the undisputed number 1 on this list, is the 1947 Harley-Davidson Knucklehead that belonged to Steve McQueen, the king of cool, the most iconic motorcycle enthusiast in the history of human culture. McQueen's personal connection to motorcycles was not a publicity stunt or a studio-manufactured image. He was a genuine, deeply passionate, technically proficient rider who competed in motorcycle enduro racing, rode in the 6 Days Trial as part of the United States team, and owned and rode dozens of machines throughout his life. His motorcycles were not props, they were companions. The 1947 Knucklehead, so named for the distinctive knuckle-shaped rocker covers on its 61 cubic inch overhead valve V-twin engine, was part of McQueen's personal collection at the time of his death in 1980. It passed through several documented private sales before appearing at Bonham's Las Vegas auction in 2023, where it sold for $1,812,000, the highest price ever paid for a motorcycle at public auction in recorded history. The current owner, who chose to remain anonymous, has placed the motorcycle on indefinite loan to a private museum in California, where it is displayed alongside McQueen's racing suit and helmet. What makes this motorcycle incomprehensibly valuable is not the mechanical specification. The Knucklehead is a wonderful engine, but not a technically extraordinary one by modern standards. What makes it worth $1,812,000 is the irreducible truth that Steve McQueen sat where you would sit. His hands were on these handlebars. His feet were on these foot pegs. This machine carried the most charismatic human being of the 20th century through the California landscape. And that connection, that physical continuity between legend and object, is something that no amount of carbon fiber, no quantity of titanium, and no degree of engineering excellence can manufacture or replicate. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, you are officially one of us. So click on the next video to continue the ride. This community was built for people who feel things deeply about machines. Leave a comment right now telling us which motorcycle on this list you would choose if someone handed you a blank check and why.